Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Time to Heal podcast. I'm Dr. Rani Samuel, and today our topic is the unknown father. What do I mean by that? What if you actually don't know who your genetic father is, or you've had very limited exposure to him in your childhood, maybe even just once? So this father is unknown to you. I have several patients in my practice who actually do not know who their genetic father really is. And I was making a list of some of them and the reasons that they actually do not know. Firstly, I have cases where the mother did not inform the father that he actually had a child. And this child grew up into a teenager and came to know rather late in life that his father was alive and well and actually had no knowledge of him. The other reason could be that my patient was adopted and there was limited information, or the information was sealed and that file was not available to the patient. So sometimes the patient doesn't know the genetic mother or father. Thirdly, we often have patients who are born out of sexual trauma. So it could be a rape, it could be sexual abuse, and the perpetrator is unknown. And I think we also see this in countries where rape is used as a weapon of war. And many children are born out of this, and they will never know who their father really is. The other circumstance that I have in my patients is where this particular child has a secret lineage. What do I mean by that? This is an unknown father because sometimes on certain occasions the father is actually the grandfather, the uncle, or a family member has fathered this particular child. So it proceeds to be a family secret, but it does get revealed eventually. There's a lovely saying that whatever happens in the dark will come to the light. And in my job as a clinical psychologist, I have seen this happen over and over again. Nothing actually remains hidden. Another reason for the unknown father is that the mother could have had a secret affair. And out of that affair, a child is born. And this child is hidden in the nuclear family. But this too comes to the light. Another reason I've seen in my patients is because they were born from a sperm donor. And they don't know the exact lineage from which they come. What is interesting is that when people seek my help, men and women, they often will begin a search process. There is this innate need for information about one's genetic background. And they want to understand the family tree, the roots, where do they come from, where do they have half sisters and half brothers. And this especially becomes critical when there is a loss of a parent or there's a loss of a sibling. And they suddenly realize that there could be other people connected to them. They don't have to be alone in this world. They could be an aunt or an uncle to their own children. So this search process does begin. And not because they want to replace the adoptive parents, but because they want to understand themselves. Sometimes it's a medical condition that begins the search and begins the conversation. I once saw a young woman. She was about 18 and she started presenting with schizophrenia. So there were psychiatric symptoms. And her entire adoption discussion came to the fore. And it was found that both her parents lived in a shelter in the city. And they were alcoholic, and they probably had schizophrenia in the psychiatric history, but it never came up for discussion until she started presenting with symptoms. And it was quite frightening because this was a genetic strain that seemed to have manifested in this young woman. Today, I want to talk to you about a single case that made a huge impact in my understanding the area of the unknown father. She was a lovely young woman that came to see me after a breakup. And this was quite a serious breakup because the couple was engaged. So this was her fiancé. And for various reasons, it was a traumatic end, and she couldn't find her grounding again. So she decided to come to therapy to deal with this issue. As is normal, we take a full family history. And what I discovered was that her father was never part of the picture. And her mother, a single parent, was the key parent and grew her up and got her to study. And now she had an academic position in a college. But there was always this void. There was always this gap that became increasingly obvious as the years went by. And she would tell me openly, I have no need for a father. So when this happened, the void just became larger. The pain and heartbreak was so severe, and she could not understand why it threatened to overtake her life. And as part of our journey, I would say to her, imagine your father, and let's begin to heal that wound. And she would say, I can't. I have no memory of him. I have no photograph of him. I don't know what he looks like. And then as time went, I posed a real challenge to her. And I said, well, imagine the back of a man walking down a street, and that's your father. You don't have the facial features for him, but you can see the back of him. She was extremely resistant to me. But as time went on, I received a letter via email. And she sent me 2 pictures, and both were the back of a man. One had a hat, it was a dark street, and he was walking down. And that's what she imagined her father to be. I could tell you about the letter, but I thought it would have a greater impact if I read it to you. And I asked her permission to read it to you in this particular podcast. Many of my patients enjoy sharing their stories because it is hoped that something in their story, something in their pain, suffering, and healing would actually benefit you. Isn't that really key to why we go through things, so that others benefit from our healing? So I'm going to read portions of this letter out to you, and I hope that it would clarify things in your own mind in case you have an unknown father or you have a father you don't know too well. When she sent me the letter, she addressed it to his name because he wasn't dad to her. So this is what she wrote. Dear Tony, I cannot call you dad because for me that is a title that is earned and not something that you given simply by fathering a child. So that tells you immediately where we are. I don't really know if I'm able to forgive you for everything you did and everything you didn't do. I grew up never really caring about you not being a part of my life. You never mattered to me. I never missed anything growing up that fathers and daughters do. Well, I don't think she knew what fathers and daughters really did growing up. And here we continue. It was only much later in my life that I felt the void of your absence. Not specifically your absence, but the absence of a father. I think that's really well said. I don't know if you would have been a good father or not, but it would have been nice to have had you around so that I didn't have to be so responsible in my life. Having you around may have given me the opportunity to be somewhere else in the world, doing something else. You see, she had to keep a very small life because she ended up taking a lot of responsibility for her mother, financially and otherwise. She couldn't explore, she couldn't have her freedom, she couldn't grow. She had to keep a tiny life to keep life going. And this is what she also says. It would have been nice to have your love and support. What you have shown me is that you were an untruthful coward. You chose to leave my mom and I'm sure you made promises to her which you ended up breaking. You were not honest or honorable enough to even accept me as your child. You denied that I was your child to get out of child support. And I think that's exceptionally hurting. If you really felt remorse for your actions, the least you could have done was try to financially support me to the best of your ability. But you didn't. And that to me shows that you never cared in the least bit. You know, it's so important for a father to provide resources to the mother and to the child, to be providing financially and emotionally, to give provision and protection to the child. You made my mom feel cheap and unwanted and not worthy. You showed her that neither her nor I were worth anything. But I know who I am, and I'm nothing like you. In any way, I want you to know that. And I never want to be like you in any way. Then she goes on to say, the strangest thing, though, is that I ended up falling in love with someone who is exactly like you in character. Deceitful, dishonest, cowardly, disrespectful, irresponsible, weak-minded, and selfish. So, the cycle repeated. I don't know how to forgive you, or if you are even forgivable, because you had a choice, but you never chose me. I realize why you didn't choose me. It's because you didn't love my mother. Because of what you did, and then you left us. You left her and you left me. You compromised my mom's entire life, and she's had to live with the stigma caused by your betrayal for the better part of her life. You compromised my life also. And this letter remained unsigned. And remember, this was just part of the therapy process. Well, we worked with that. We worked with the disappointment. We worked with the rejection and all of it. And my patient sent me interesting things. And down the line, she began to see what her mom really went through, because her mom could be very frustrating. And she had a greater level of compassion and empathy for her mother. And a few weeks later, she sent me a song that she had downloaded and she wanted to share with me. And it was a traditional Hindi song, so it was Indian in origin, by a beautiful artist that had really the voice of a real songbird. And she felt this healing and this relief come over her. And she could only express it through music. And she wanted to share it with me. And I must say, although I didn't understand the words of the song, I understood it completely, because it's almost like music does transcend our understanding in so many words. And the entire tone, the music, the healing voice of this artist seemed to express the message of what my patient was feeling inside. And this is what she wrote when she sent me the song. She said, "This is a classic song, and this artist has a beautiful voice which sounds so pure. It travels straight to the innermost sacred part of my heart. It soothes, it caresses, it makes me feel a love so pure that fills my entire being with life, warmth, peace, and love. It makes me feel one with the universe. It feels like the billions of neurons around my heart and throughout my body are being tickled by the fluttering of a million butterflies." And that's what healing sounds like, and that's what wholeness starts to feel like in a person. And I knew in this moment her healing journey had just become elevated, and she was enjoying a new level of wholeness. And there was much more levels to be considered in the years ahead. But this is what an unknown father can cause in a person, the wounding that is lifelong and deep. And this case would show you that healing is available for such a serious condition. So I encourage you, if this is you or someone you know, do not despair, don't give up hope. Know that healing is yours to experience and enjoy in this lifetime. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.